defend their title, but still second in the West behind the Utah Jazz. Kawhi and Paul George's Clippers are in third and on their heels just a few games back. Perk's still here with us. Max, who's the biggest threat to the Lakers in the West?
Well, I started out the season by saying it could be the Mavericks, but I have to say, and they started to win more recently, but Porzingis is always coming back from injury. And they've gone through COVID issues this year. I believe the Mavericks are going to be very dangerous by the time the playoffs roll around. But at this point, the way they're playing, it's got to be the Los Angeles Clippers. Guys, we know, like, you think the Clippers, you think Kawhi and Paul George. And I don't expect Kawhi to choke again in a Game 7. Although I also don't think you can rely on Paul George to be a superstar in the playoffs. But it may not matter. Like, you think of the Clippers, you think the supporting cast, Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, Marcus Morris, and it's a good supporting cast. But they didn't, the tweaks they made to the roster, mainly I thought they upgraded with Serge Ibaka. Montrezl Harrell's a good player. Serge Ibaka can do a lot of the things Montrezl Harrell can do defensively, and he can block shots, and he can shoot. So I thought they were marginally improved there. They really needed a guy like Rondo. They didn't get him. But I didn't know Nick Batum could still play. Nicholas Batum was a guy who got, if he didn't get a max deal not that, several years ago, it was something close to it. And most people think, most people thought at the time, he's like one of those statless all-star guys. The numbers don't jump out at you, but in every facet of the game, he helps your team. But he got his money and was in a non-competitive situation and seemed to lose interest. He's Nick Batum again, it seems like. So that's actually an under-the-radar improvement to that team that was already pretty deep. And now you look at them and you go, Kawhi and Paul George and Batum and Ibaka and Lou Will and Patrick Beverley and Marcus Morris. They got a whole lot of. And Perk, at this moment, if the playoffs were to start today, that's the team that would trouble the Lakers the most, I think.
Well, I'm going to say this. The Utah all of it. And if it's one team in the West that could beat the Lakers in the West and challenge them, it's the Utah Jazz. When I look at this team is not lacking at nothing. They have everything. You want defense? They rank top 5 in every statistical category. You want offense? They rank top 5 in every statistical category. And then they have a head coach who I think don't get enough praise in Quinn Snyder, who's a hell of an X's and O's type guy. But when you look at their roster, they have shooting in Bogdanovich, Jordan Clarkson, who in my opinion is a 6th Man of the Year candidate, who's leading the league and scoring off the bench right now. You have Joe Ingles, okay? A defensive player of the year. They have Derek.
All right, Perk, I think we're okay.
They have Derek Favors, okay?
You're breaking up for a bit, but it's fine.
They have Derek Favors, a backup center that come in and they don't lack at that position. Mike Conley is starting to play like the Mike Conley that we saw in Memphis. And Donovan Mitchell, he has took a tremendous leap. We all know that he could get buckets. We know that he could score in his sleep. We witnessed that last year in the playoffs. But now he's taking another step in making guys better. He's dropping dimes. He's creating passes on time, on target. So if it's any team in the West right now, today, that could challenge the Los Angeles Lakers and beat them, it's the Utah Jazz.
Only problem with the Jazz is I hear what you're saying. You're right about all that. Bogdanovich and Gobert, you have the offense, you have the shooting, the defense, and Donovan Mitchell can go get you a bucket basically whenever he wants. But they lost to Denver last year because they really had one guy who can be an MVP when you need him most in Donovan Mitchell. And Denver had two in Jamal Murray and Jokic. And when I look at this team, Perk, and as much as I know it's not about hero ball and all that, if you have an efficient team, look at the Spurs once upon a time. But when you're playing other teams who can do a lot of the stuff you can do, and they have two guys who can go do it like that, it's different. Mike Conley was no good in last year's playoffs, and he's always been one of my favorite players. But he is going to have to be that guy who can also go get the bucket when you most need it for them to be what you're saying in the playoffs.
But Max, to your point, they took the Denver Nuggets to 7 games, okay? And Jamal Murray had an out-of-body experience, in my opinion. He went
So
off.
Donovan, though.
But look, they were missing a 20-point score. Bogdanovich wasn't there. This is a huge piece that they were missing last year in the bubble. Now they got him back, and he's playing phenomenal basketball, Max.
No argument there.
All right. Big Perk, we're
I
letting
know.
you go. You have a wonderful weekend, and we will catch back up with you
too.
on Monday. Stay safe. Max, you and I, we're going around the sports world. We're catching up
Smile,
with
Perk.
UFC
Smile a
President
little.
Dana White next. Will the winner of Poirier-McGregor 3 bring the unbeatable Khabib out of feeling himself? After scoring 40 in a win over the Magic last night, can't blame him. Steph is having one of the best stretches of his career, averaging over 35 points and shooting 53 for 101 from beyond the arc over his past 8 games. When asked if he thought he should be in the conversation for MVP, Steph said, "The game speaks for itself." Facts. ESPN asked 100 media members in its first MVP straw poll of the season, and Curry currently ranks 7th within the first place of the vote. At the top is LeBron with 53 first place votes, followed by Joel Embiid, Jokic, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, and Giannis. Big Perk back here with us. Max, where do you think Steph should rank right now in the MVP race?
I think he should be a notch higher than what he is. I'd put him ahead of Giannis because Steph's outside shooting is so absurd that he's creating space for everyone as usual in a team where going into the year I said should really has below average shooting at every position. There's no starter who even shoots average for their position except for Steph is having guys hit shots that don't normally hit shots at that rate. Because like what happened to Draymond early on in the kind of explosion of the Splash Brothers with Steph and Clay, Dre started hitting threes. He just had so much time to do it. So he's having that kind of ripple effect that makes up for the defense that Giannis can play at his size and also Giannis's offensive contributions. But I wouldn't buy, and I like the list that we have. I would put Embiid 1 at this moment, LeBron 2, Jokic, KD, and Kawhi. A caller to my radio show yesterday, Kendrick Perkins, you were on the Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio, 2 p.m. Eastern yesterday. The caller to my radio show brought up Kawhi as an MVP. And it's funny because he's kind of flown under the radar. And I think what's happening with Kawhi and with Giannis is people are like, we saw what happened in the playoffs last year. Stop. Right? They want them to prove something that they can't yet prove in this season. But if you look at Kawhi Leonard, whose team has 18 wins, they just won against Minnesota like without Paul George, who plays defense, obviously, we all know Kawhi Leonard, who's averaging, about 27 points a game, but with 6 assists and 5 boards and 2 steals. And by the way, he doesn't shoot it like Steph because no one ever has. But Kawhi is almost a 50, 40, 90 guy. He's over 50% from the field, over 40% from 3. He takes 5 a game, and he's almost at 90% from the line. So he's also an extremely efficient offensive player. I would have Steph, we have him 6th. I'd have him, ESPN have him 7th. I'd have him 6th.
Well, you're wrong, Max. And I would have Steph Curry top 5 in the MVP conversation. Matter of fact, I do have Steph Curry top 5 in the MVP conversation. I actually have him ranked 4th behind Big Jokic, Big Embiid, and LeBron James. And here's why. When you look at Steph Curry right now, and I said this before the season started, that I thought Steph Curry was going to have an MVP type season, but I didn't know he was going to do it to this fashion. If you look at his stats right now, it's one of his best seasons of his career. It's compared to 2015. They are identical. He's averaging 30 points, 5.5 rebounds, almost 6 assists a game, and he's on the task shooting 50% from the field. Now, when I look at this Warriors team, and I look at the personnel that they have there, no disrespect to Draymond Green because he's a star in his role. I think Andrew Wiggins have been playing phenomenal basketball, solid basketball in his role as well. But if you take Steph off this Golden State Warriors team, they would be the worst team in the league. They would be in the lottery, literally. He's literally single-handedly carrying this team, putting up monster numbers every single night. He was 10 for 19 last night from the three. I mean, he just went on a tear, completely took over the game, got them back into the game in the third quarter to go ahead and blow it open and win the game. So when I'm looking at what Steph is doing, this is one of his best seasons of his career. And without him on this team, the Golden State Warriors would be the worst team in the league or in the lottery.
Well, I'm not going to argue too strenuously against Steph as a top 5 MVP candidate because I think you can make the argument. Let me tell you why I don't. Like, I respect putting him in the top 5 because of the impact he's having on a team that, you're right, would be a lottery team without him. I don't like to hold guys, teammates against them, whether, if they're good. So a lot of times in an MVP conversation, you say, well, he's on a squad that's no good. I'm going to give him extra points. It's not Kawhi or LeBron or Embiid's fault that they're playing on good teams. Let me tell you why I don't have him in the top 5. Here's my list. Embiid 1 at this moment. LeBron 2. Jokic, KD, Kawhi. And by the way, the dude right after Steph, for me, is Giannis. And of those 7 guys, they all have big defensive impact. Big defensive impact. That's half the game. So they also have offensive impact. Even if you want to argue Steph has an even greater offensive impact because of the space he creates and how efficient he is, you could argue that. But these guys are in that conversation on that end of the floor. And on the other end of the floor, Steph's not in the conversation with them. Even Jokic, who doesn't have a reputation as a defender, has a defensive influence on the game because of his size and because he's worked on that side of his game. So I don't think Steph's offense is enough to offset these elite scorers and playmakers who also are elite defenders. Embiid, LeBron, these guys are elite Kawhi, elite defenders.
Well, Max, let me say this. Let me say why I give Steph a whole lot of credit. Because all the MVP candidates that's right now the front runners for MVP, Steph is the only one that is not playing with a certified Robin. He does not have another superstar alongside of him. You look at LeBron James right now, he has Anthony Davis. You look at Kawhi Leonard, he has Paul George. You look at Jokic, he has Jamal Murray. You look at Joel Embiid, he has Ben Simmons. Steph Curry, who does he have? He's single-handedly carrying this Warriors team and doing it in great fashion. I know it's a great point. That's why I brought it up.
He is. You're right. No, it's a good point. I didn't say a great point. I said it's a good point. But I'll say this.
No,
he has done it he's done it to the tune of 14 wins. Like, of everyone we're talking about, his team has won least on the list. So it's understandable because of the roster he's dealing with. And maybe if his team had a better one-loss record than Kawhi's team, given that Kawhi has a much better team than Steph, I would agree with you. But they don't. All these other guys' teams have won more, yes, because of the supporting cast. So when you're trying to isolate the value of the player, on offense, I would say if it was just an offensive conversation, damn, you might even say Steph is number 1 on this list if it was just offense. But the other guys are right there with him. But when you start talking defense, Perk, he's not with the other guys. He's not with Kawhi. He's not with LeBron. He's not with Embiid.
Max, so what? So what?
But what on defense?
Look, when I look at NBA, look, when we talk about the most valuable player, we talk about the player that's